The town hall meeting for the comprehensive plan strike force. And let's start off with we have a lot of people that several of our members are just listening in, but let's start out with the roll call of people we have registered in. And Ashley, would you call names out on that, please?
I will. If I miss any of the members that are here, just let me know. We have Tom Farrell.
I'm here.
David Raymond.
Here.
Brooke Brown.
Here.
Chris Braden.
Here.
Drew Flahive.
Here.
David Smith.
Present.
And Meredith Knight.
Here.
And I think that's all I show, unless you're calling in and you're a member just by phone number. Are there any other Strike Force members on the call?
I'm not seeing any on my end. I know we had some that wanted to just watch the video, so that's what we'll do with that. Our agenda, the first thing is a discussion regarding the purpose of a comprehensive plan. And let me just I think everybody probably has seen our flyers, but I'll just go over this very briefly. Basically, a comprehensive plan is just a long-range plan on how we want our city to look and what we want out of our city. So that's an easy, quick answer on that. Now, it's a lot of details of how we get there, but that's the gist of what we want. And if any of our committee members would like to add to that, they can. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead into the to the town hall meeting and let our citizens speak. And not seeing any raised hands, we will start. Ashley, if you will call the first person that wants to raise their hand.
Sure. For everyone joining the call, there's a few different ways to raise your hand. If you are on an app, either on like an iPad or a phone, I believe down in the bottom, there will be an option for more, and then you'll have an option to raise your hand. If you are calling in on just a phone, *9 will raise your hand, and then *6 will unmute you. And if you are on a regular desktop computer, down at the bottom, you can click on participants. And then when that opens up a window, it will give you an option to raise your hand. So at this time, anybody who would like to speak can go ahead and raise their hand.
Well, let's see, we've got 42 people on, so let's ask for a volunteer to start it off. Got anybody, Ashley?
At this time, yes, we have Jeff Marks. Jeff, if you are ready to unmute, you can speak.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I just had a quick question for Tom to kind of kick this off. So I know that there have been some residents asking for another survey. So I just wanted to hear if there's an update on that.
Jeff, I think we probably need to do another survey, and it was my intention to do so. We have not drafted one. I have received a couple of draft suggestions, questions to go in there, and we'll certainly try to incorporate those. But the bottom line is, I think we need one, and I intend to send out another subsequent survey on that. Did that answer your question, Jeff?
Sort of. So I'm just curious about.
I lost you, Jeff.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's very helpful. Thank you for that, Tom. And I guess the next question would be, what is the next milestone, specific milestone, and what is the timing for that milestone? Like, do we have a date that we plan on accomplishing as the next step? We
have several subcommittees that we formed. One being the BK Road subcommittee, and another being the residential subcommittee, and a third being the, well, there's four of them actually. We have a bond rate subcommittee, and we have a tax rate subcommittee, and we have a utility subcommittee. So once that we start getting input from these subcommittees, I think what we'll probably do is come back and have, I would prefer to have an additional town hall meeting to discuss those parts that we've have at that time. We originally had a request from the city that we complete this by March. I'm not, and I'm trying to adhere to that as close as possible, but I don't want to rush this, and I don't want to make sure, I want to make sure that we get as much of our citizens' input as we can before we issue any kind of document on that.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Jeff?
So I guess I'm confused. I think that's helpful. So I guess my question is the plan to do the survey after collecting a lot of information, or is the plan to do the survey up front before you start going in different directions? It sounds like you want to collect a lot of information before sending out a survey.
My personal feeling, and this of course is going to be left to our committee to decide as a whole, but my personal opinion is we should collect some data first before we do the survey. And some of these things have been asked before, and we just have to get some answers. One being, is there enough utility capacity to do what we think we want to do on BK's Road, for example? So I would prefer that we get a little bit more information so that we can, when we do a survey, it can be a little more detail about what our citizens may want on that.
Great, thank you.
On that. Thank you, Jeff, as always. Ashley?
At this time, now we have Eric Groten. You are welcome to unmute and speak.
Oh, thanks. I just had a real quick question. There was a mention given to 4 subcommittees. Can you, and it's probably something I could have found independently, but can you tell me what the charges are to those 4 committees, please?
Well, the residential committee is going to look at our building code and any other changes that they may want to look at on residential lots. The commercial section is going to do, our charge on the BK's Road was to look at a lot by lot analysis of each of our lots on both sides of BK's Road and make a determination about what we think we'd like to see there. The Utility Commission was to determine the amount of capacity we have in our wastewater system and our water system to be able to redevelop any portion of BK's Road. And I think our bond rate and tax rate was just to determine what the impact would be to our citizens on their tax rate on various scenarios that we had that might go forward, that we may choose to do from an income standpoint for the city. Brooke, I think that's a fair analysis, isn't it?
Yes, it is. What we're working on is looking at what amount of bonding capacity we could get at various steps of increase in the current tax rate, both initially and maybe over time, and then be able to present that to the residents and get a take from the residents on what amount of additional bonding capacity might be acceptable.
And just one, or maybe it's 2 different follow-up questions to that. Are the charges actually written down? And do they specify a time frame for, reporting back to the full task force?
Well, let me answer the second one first. We really haven't set a timeline. they are, I've been working on with the utility side, and I think Brooke has been getting the information on the bond and tax rate from our bond council. The residential, I think, has not met yet. And I think the commercial it was just formed in this last meeting, and I don't believe they've met yet either on that, Eric. So I would anticipate that I would not get anything back until January on most of this that I'm looking at for both the residential and the commercial. I think we'll have the utility part of it resolved, and I think I don't have a timeline for the bond and the tax rates that we would have on that. Although we've been getting a lot of information on that, and I think that's that may be those two. I think the tax rate and the bond rate and the utility will probably be the first that comes out.
Yeah.
But I'm anticipating we have this part of it done by January.
From all four?
From all four.
And then back to the first question, I'm sure you've done a very fine and fair job explaining or summarizing what their charges are, but was there ever anything, in writing, sort of
It's in our minutes that we did. I don't think that we put that in a direct charge that we would do. And although that's a pretty good idea to do, and I think I can probably do that and have that for our next meeting. Good thought. So, and it may be the latter part of January. December is kind of a tough month to get people together and to get a lot done, but we're going to do the best we can through it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Tom, this is Amber. Ashley, her Zoom crashed, so she's coming back in, but I see we have Art Lasoya's hand raised.
Okay. Art?
It's actually Alan. Hey, Tom. And I hope you can forgive my, need to get back to fundamentals here, but can you speak a little bit to the principles around this planning, the problems you're trying to solve actually, and the optimizations that you feel like you need to make, and the kind of the target for whom these optimizations are being addressed?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts. And thank you for being here. But this is the last sort of comprehensive plan we did, which wasn't really a full comprehensive plan, was done in 1999, I believe. Amber, is that
Correct.
right? So it's time to update it, and it's all what we're trying to do is get a picture of where our residents in Rollingwood want our city to look like in 5, 10, 20 years from now, and what kind of services they want to be, that the city should try to target to bring in. City has some carrots and sticks to help the redevelopment of BK's Road so that it is, it mirrors what our citizens want on that. And then on the residential side, there's a lot of issues floating around on residential side. And, that includes the traffic in our interior city, streets. It includes building size and building setbacks and, the height of buildings. And that's what they're going to be looking at on that. The purpose of this is twofold. One is our long-range plan, which the city should have so they can direct their efforts to get what the citizens want out of that. And it's just, we're going to be telling our elected officials what we want out of them on that, what we want our city to look like. And that includes everything, parks, you name it, that we're going to have. And then the second part of that is, every time when I was mayor, our bond council would always kind of question whether we had a up-to-date comprehensive plan. And there's an issue about whether or not that will affect our bond rating or not. But if they ask for it, I always thought that was probably a pretty good thing to get for them if they brought it up. Amber, did the bond council bring that up this year? Do you recall?
I'm sorry, say bond council brought up.
Brought up the up-to-date comprehensive plan.
Well, when the council refinanced the 2012 Series B wastewater funds, we went through a rating process, and we at that time had ended up maintaining our AA bond rating, but they did make it very clear to us that it's only because we had some of these plans in motion that they felt like we would be able to keep our AA bond rating. But if not for those plans, we may have slipped. And then of course we all know that we wouldn't get as good a rates.
Which means more taxes.
Right.
So. Good question. Alan, did that answer your?
Yeah, that was really thorough. Thank you. I appreciate the, taking the time to describe all that to me.
You bet. Amber, can you see if we've got anybody else?
Sure. We have Phil McDuffie. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I was just wanting to follow up. What specific plans do we have that are in motion that helped us with the bond people?
So we told them that we were planning on embarking on the comprehensive plan. I believe at the time we were wrapping up the IIP. Also, we let them know they also want us to have a long-term investment and financial plan. So we told them we would try to get working on that as well.
And what would that entail? What kind of investment? What are we talking about there?
Well, really, it's just a long-term financial. I shouldn't have said investment, but long-term financial plan. Basically, planning out for the future. What we're going to need as far as cash flow, as far as capital improvement projects, those kind of things.
Okay.
Bill,
And what's IIP?
Oh.
You said IIP. What's that?
It's the infrastructure improvements plan.
Okay.
It's really just the drainage plan. I think we also had in motion the corridor study by Retail Coach.
Okay.
Phil, I'll tell you and Alan, I'll tell you one of the things that Rollingwood has always been, we've always been kind of, they look at us a little different when we're going in our bond ratings, is that the majority of our income for the city comes from ad valorem taxes. And bond rating companies look at that as values can go down, they're looking at it, of course, nationwide, but the values can go down and that can adversely affect the financial health of a city. So they like you to have a diversified source of income, which would be not only ad valorem taxes, but sales taxes and use taxes or whatever else that I guess we get franchise fees from some of the utilities. And I don't think they count traffic tickets, if I recall, thank goodness, but having a diversified source of revenue has always been something that they've brought up to the city. And Amber, I imagine that, did they bring that up to you also this year?
They did. Yeah, they do want some diversification. I think we figured that 80% of our revenues come from property taxes as compared to Westlake Hills, where 80% of their revenues come from sales taxes.
And I'm not sure which one, frankly, is more apt to be have a problem, but that's what they think about anyway on that.
Well, I understand that they would want diversification. I mean, basically, if you know, hopefully not everything goes down all at once. That's probably their thought there. So that makes some sense. As far as I have been watching the tapes from the strike force and that type of thing, and one thing that I would like to maybe have looked at a second or third time is they keep talking about mixed use and the projections they have for mixed use give us all this money, but or bring in all this revenue, but then there is no discussion for what additional infrastructure and the load on the municipal utilities, our police force and that type of thing that might be incumbent if we start doing any of those things to increase our population, our residential population. On top of that, Eanes ISD seems to, from what I've heard, is completely overloaded as it is. So if we add more residents to their pool, it's going to overburden Eanes ISD even further. And we all know how much that really is part of why our neighborhood is so desirable and is so affluent, why the property values are what they are. So I'd really like them looking at that. The other thing too, they say that you can't do two-story retail. It seems like two-story retail might actually bring in more revenue, but they shoot that down saying that people never really go for that. Well, they might if the second story retail was desirable enough that people are willing to walk up one flight of stairs to get to it. I've seen a lot of other cities that had two-story retail and it was thriving quite well. So I understand it might be kind of more having one-story office over one-story retail as a norm, but I have seen two-story retail work quite often, and that would bring in more revenue according to what projections they had than what I was seeing. And then the last thing is I keep hearing discussions about creating a trail down there on the Dry Creek and the Eanes Creek. What's the impetus of that? What's the desire of that? Or why would we ever want to do that?
Well, let me start with the last one first, Phil. That's just something that we're looking at right now. We have some citizens that have asked for that on the initial survey, and some citizens have been adamantly opposed to it. So that's going to be something that we look at, but our committee hadn't taken any position at all on that yet. So that's
given
not
the amount of trails infrastructure that we have that is with easy walking distance to our neighborhood, that is already being supported by Austin, going from the nature center up to the park that leads on Rollingwood Drive at the entrance of our park. I don't understand why there would be any desire or any need for that. It seems to me like the only thing that would really be driving that is having us create a public, nice space for a private development as a benefit to a private developer. It really doesn't seem like it would really, if you've ever been down in there, it's a floodplain. You don't want to be down there when it's wet, and when it's not wet, it's just, just kind of it's a buffer zone between the residential and the other. If you want trails, and apparently we're behind the 8 ball on our finances, why are we creating yet more parkland that we have to maintain when there's been extensive discussions about how we can't afford the parks that we currently have?
Very well, a good point, Phil. Let me kind of address the other parts of that. We are looking at one of the things that we've committed to doing is looking at any of the negative ramifications to our city from any use that's recommended. And that would include both the traffic that might be traffic issues that might result, as well as the making sure that we have enough utility capacity to do whatever we recommend. So we did set a subcommittee up to do the utility analysis to determine how much water and wastewater we have remaining in our contracts with the city of Austin. And I would say this too on that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't find a different, that we couldn't expand that, but I will tell you, when that was originally put in, those were our options at the time. And I don't know whether you could get that expanded or not. So there is a limitation on that as we go forward on that. But we did commit to looking at any of the extra policing, traffic that comes in, the effect on our residents, on adjacent property owners, residential property owners on that. As to the two-story retail, again, we're going to be looking at what we end up having, what we might recommend as a zoning on some of these properties on a tract by tract basis, a lot by lot basis on BK's Road. A lot of this is going to depend on the marketplace and whether the property owners, we're not going to tell the property owners specifically what they have to do with that property. The city may say, we're not going to change our code to allow apartments, for example. We may not allow office buildings, or, not as profitable for the city as retail would be. Restaurants have their own set of issues. They create a lot of sales tax, but they also create a lot of work for our city and additional costs. So we will recognize the negatives of as we go through there, if there are, and how we might make some recommendations on how we may minimize those.
Okay, I appreciate all that. I hope these things will be looked at very hard. It seems like it's a very tight time frame to try to push this through to March, especially in our current situation. The timing seems a little dubious on it, but I'll lower my hand and let you all get on.
Well, Phil, I would say this on the time. There's a time that we would like to do this, and if it takes more time to do it in a proper and steady way, that's what we'll take to get it done. I would like to have it. This is when the council commissioned this, they requested this back to be back to them in March so they could act on it. If it takes a little bit longer, I'm reasonably sure the council will understand that it is very difficult to run these, to get much of this done when we can't meet, and
Yes.
it's and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then tax time will be here. So it's a tough time to get that done. So I'll just commit to you this, that we will do the best we can to get it done, but we're not going to be rushed to do it, and we will do it in a manner that I think will come up with a good end result for their city. And this is a long-term deal, and quite frankly, the biggest help to us is to get input from people like you that give us what they want, so we can take that into account as we go forward on this.
Well, I think an additional survey that is more comprehensive and maybe not quite as directed and slanted as the first one was, would be a great help in that regard. So with that, I'll lower my hand and let somebody else have the floor.
Thank you very much, Bill. Let's
All
see.
right.
Is Amber's gone?
We're both, yeah, we're both back in. Sorry, I
There
got
we go.
kicked out. I still show that Art Lasoya, your hand is still up. Are you wanting to
Alan?
speak?
It's Alan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or maybe Art.
That was the name on the, okay. All right, we'll move on. I think next, Kevin Glassy had his hand up.
Yes, I did. I had a question or a couple of questions. There's been lots of discussion about the bond debt and debt service and such. And so I was wondering if you could just give us a little thumbnail of what the city's revenue is and how much bond debt we have, how much of our revenue goes to service that debt, and whether you intend to, the city has any plans to issue any more bonds anytime in the near future.
Well, let me answer the last one. I can answer that fairly quickly. If they issue any bonds, they have to hold an election. And I don't think we have any elections scheduled right now, do we, Amber?
We do not.
There we go. Ashley, thank you. Kevin, it'll take a little while to get that information for you, but we'll make sure we get it for you. I don't have
Well,
it.
and I don't mind a ballpark of it either, but I understand if you'd rather get accurate information. That's fine.
I don't have the budget here. Amber, do you have our budget in front of you that you can answer Kevin's questions, or would we rather get back to him on a?
I'd probably rather get back to him because I don't know offhand how much debt we have outstanding.
Okay. Kevin, is that okay if we get back with you on it?
Sure, of course.
Any other questions, Kevin, that we can answer in a?
Is bond debt the only way the city finances its operations?
So we
No.
don't finance operations with bonds. They're used for capital projects. Operations are funded through the property taxes.
We
And
have.
is there any other form of debt besides the bonds?
No,
Well,
we have 3 bond issue, or wait, 4 now when we refinance.
I think we have bank debt too, didn't we? Is
Yeah.
that considered bonds?
Well, it is debt, and that's what I was wondering, if there's any other debt besides bond debt. If there's bank debt, that's exactly what I'm asking about.
This is Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm Brooke Brown. I'm a member of the strike force and have been appointed on the Bond and Tax Committee subcommittee. So one of the things that we're looking at is the city's bonded indebtedness, which is there are 3 outstanding issues of bonds and then tax notes that were issued this past summer in connection with the 503 Vale property. And one of the things that I'm hoping to be able to report soon, within a week or 2, is how the existing debt is structured, how much of the property tax rate that's currently paid by Rolling Wood is necessary to fund that debt, how much of the tax rate funds ongoing operations, as Ashley has described, and then to be able to present what amount of additional debt could be undertaken, either 20 or 30-year bonds that might fund some of the necessary improvements, like some of the safety concerns with respect to drainage and other things that might need to be undertaken in a short time frame. But that's one of the questions that then goes back to the citizens of Rolling Wood and to the whole strike force about what do we believe our needs are, our immediate needs, what do we believe of that should be funded with bonds, and whether or not the council is in support of funding those projects with bonds, and how that might fit into the whole list of priorities of projects the city might have. So that is what analysis is underway. I don't have a summary of that ready yet, because we're still just now getting the data to present. But that's underway.
Well, that's exactly the kind of information I was curious about. So that's great that you're working on that. I'm a little surprised that folks on the call don't have some idea what the total revenue is or what the total bond debt is off the top of their head. I can certainly tell you what my revenue and my debt is. But anyway, I appreciate the service you're putting in to put that information together.
I mean, basically the revenue is, we get just shy of $1 million in property taxes, about sales taxes $500,000, and then fees cover the rest of that. So $2 million to do operations, and then we each get about $2 million in the water and wastewater funds. Now 100% of the debt is paid for out of property taxes at this point. So they also, this year's debt service is going to be, I've got this in front of me. Okay, so this year's debt service is going to cost 11.49 cents. And that's roughly 100,000 per penny. So you can do the math on that. And then our operations rate is 12.2 cents. And each penny is worth about $100,000.
So when you say 100,000, you mean in property value?
Yes.
Like ad valorem value. It's about a 1 cent rate is what you're talking about.
Yes,
Per-
about 1 cent of property taxes in Rollingwood raises about $100,000.
Oh, okay, I get it. All right, thanks.
And Kevin, maybe this will help too. There are some other sources of revenue that we have, and I think they were lumped into this, but we have, in addition to our ad valorem and sales tax, we get some little bit of money from franchise fees. We get a little bit from fines for traffic violations. We get, of course, utility payments, and we also get our building permits and utility permits.
Mhm.
And that's been a fairly large number over the last several years, I think. And that Amber, I don't remember the number. I hadn't looked at the budget since it was done in August, I guess. So.
Right.
And Kevin, keep in mind, we're not elected officials. We didn't work on the budget. We just
Just on the committee, huh?
yeah, we're just have been asked to do this.
No, you're the former mayor though, aren't you?
It's been a couple years. I remember
Yeah.
what it was when I was mayor, but I don't know what it is now. Remember, I
Right.
started in 1998, so
Well,
I've
good for
done
you.
a lot of budgets.
Well, I do want to tell you and the other members of the committees that I do appreciate y'all's service and the time and effort you're putting into studying the problem. And we do appreciate as much information as you can communicate back out to the citizens as possible, which, even if you think it'll fall on deaf ears or be out of context, it isn't necessarily. This is a great thing to communicate, to take the time to have this Zoom meeting and give us information. We all appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. I just wish it wasn't a Zoom meeting. That's all I can tell.
No, we all do. I'm going to lower my hand, let somebody else
Right.
participate.
Right. It looks like next we have Jeff Marks.
Jeff? Jeff here?
Jeff, it looks
Hi,
like
can you hear me now?
yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to repeat what Kevin just said. Big thanks to Tom and the Strike Force for all the hard work you're putting in now. It's really, really helpful. I think it's been incredible since the Strike Force has started from where we were. I think it's really, really good. I've watched all the videos. It sheds a lot of light to what's going on. So thank you for the time. My question, I just wanted to have a follow-up on what Phil raised earlier. So in regards to the Pegasus slides, Phil raised a great point about the expenses not being modeled. You know, a lot of folks on this call are in business, and you know, I think it's surprising to model revenues without expenses. I don't know anyone that would do that in any of their businesses. So, you know, I've reviewed the slides and I have found a few other questionable assumptions. And I have doubts about the credibility of the modeling. I do work in modeling full-time. It's my full-time job. I run a global modeling group for a credit rating agency. And in my world, it's fundamental to have models reviewed and tied out with third parties. It's just the cost of doing business. You know, before we even get into discussing the assumptions, I think it would make sense to get a better understanding of if the calculations are even correct in the modeling. So, you know, is it adding 2 + 2 correctly? You know, just the basics. So a suggestion that I would have is to have the model go through third-party model validation. As part of the validation, the third party wouldn't opine on the assumptions themselves. So, you know, Pegasus wants to make assumptions. You know, everyone has their own view on what those assumptions can be, and they should be allowed to do that. But the third party could review the calculations of the outputs, confirm that they tie back to the inputs, and confirm that the inputs are transparent. I don't think that the current slides, I don't get the sense that we're at that point right now. And I think that this would be really helpful to the process. Thank you for the time.
And Jeff, thank you for participating so much in our meetings and the help you've given us. And let me just say this to everybody that's on the call. Listen, if you have a suggestion of how we might proceed, please let us know, because this is not any, this is our community's input that we're putting on there. And there's not a lot of pride of ownership from, at least, if you see that we could do something better or different or ask for something, please feel free to let us know, and we'll be glad to try to consider that as we go forward on that. And thank you again, Jeff. It's a good suggestion.
All right. John Hinton.
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
John, you are,
Yes.
you're good to go.
All right, thank you. My name is John Hinton and I reside at 2 Jeffrey Cove. I'd like to follow up on Tom's comments on utilities. You know, I've watched the Pegasus presentations over the last few months, and, you know, they proposed a hotel which can have very large water and wastewater service requirements. And they've also proposed multifamily units that could have the impact of possibly doubling existing population of Rollingwood. Well, Rollingwood, as Tom mentioned, has limited water and wastewater resources. So our first priority, in my opinion, as we move down this track, must be the protection of the rights of our existing residential and commercial customers. So following this meeting, I'm going to send a more detailed letter to the committee outlining my concerns, but I'd just like to make a few quick comments on this. Rollingwood purchases its water and wastewater services from Austin, and there are contractual limits to the amount of wastewater that we can deliver to Austin, and there are contractual limits as to the amount of water that we can purchase from Austin. That was all set in the contract that Tom negotiated way back when. But more importantly, due to an amendment to that contract subsequent to Tom's initial term, most importantly, the amount of water is contractually that we can purchase is contractually subject to reduction by Austin in the event of a drought. So if we're going to protect the rights of existing residential and commercial customers, to that water and to those wastewater services, the first thing that we need to do, and Tom mentioned this also, is to determine an estimated excess water and wastewater capacity over and above the needs of existing customers. So in my view, here's what needs to be done. First, a legal and engineering review of the contracts. Second, a modeling estimate, as Jeff mentioned, of such usage of utility usage by existing commercial customers. And that model should assume full build out and occupancy of Rolling Wood Center. Third, a modeling estimate of utility usage by existing residential customers, assuming full residential redevelopment of Rolling Wood. And fourthly, and most importantly, a modeling estimate of a margin of safety to avoid having to impose water rationing on our existing utility customers, both commercial and residential, during a drought. And finally, after this analysis is done, a meeting to obtain concurrence of Austin staff with the analysis. Now, Pegasus hadn't considered any of these complexities. They just, as been mentioned, proposed basically projects, a hotel, multifamily, and in my view, a simplistic revenue analysis. But I think that once we get through this process, we'll know, and I do believe there's excess water and wastewater capacity. I just don't know how much. I certainly don't believe it can take care of doubling the population of Rolling Wood, but I believe there is excess. Finally, the last thing I want to mention has to do with the survey, which other people have talked about. I believe it's time to conduct another survey, and it does need to be unbiased. And I think if we do this survey and we do it right, we're going to be able to create a comprehensive plan that will have the support of the community. Thank you.
Hey, John, to those that don't know, John Hinton worked incredibly hard on getting our water system back up to snuff on that. So congratulations, John, and thank you for all the work you did on that. It only took, what, about 3 years?
Right.
So there's one other point, John, I'd like to make that in that calculation. We do have a portion of our commercial on BK's Road that is not hooked to our sewer. And that's basically from Rollingwood Drive to Dry Creek on the north side of BK's Road. They are not hooked up to our sewer. So eventually when that road is improved on BK's Road, we'd be able to provide them with wastewater capacity. And they've been there for a long time. So I would imagine they should be first in line for the capacity that we have on that. And I agree with your, the quick analysis that I've looked at looks like we do have some capacity in our wastewater. I haven't done the water yet. And it's, the big unknown on the modeling for that is what happens if we get into a severe drought and Austin reduces that amount. But that's a good point, as always. Thank you, John. So. You got John, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, John, for everything you've done for Rollingwood. Ashley, do we have another hand raised?
Next, we have Eva Ruth.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome, thank you. I apologize, I'm driving, but I appreciate this opportunity and y'all holding this meeting and taking the time to hear from so many people. Rollingwood has a lot of really intelligent residents, and I'm amazed by the input so far. I would just add sort of one comment on the survey front. I think that, you know, it's been mentioned that we really want to get something that residents are very happy with and that the residents really want, yet it seems like the follow-up on the survey is kind of at this point an afterthought. And I would just really emphasize that if that is the main method of, or the mechanism of getting this very important residential input at this point, to make that a real priority and to have not only it be unbiased, but, you know, have some sort of like policy, even a master's student or somebody at the LBJ school design a survey that is, you know, sent out not only through email, but also through mail and all the different ways to solicit as much feedback as possible that can be measured. I thought that I was excited about the opportunity to give input via the survey the last time, and then kind of surprised by what seemed to me to be really problem of just lack of measurability in a lot of the questions, and was concerned that the feedback that y'all were going to get through that would just not really be very helpful. So I would just hope that that is a priority if we really want something that residents are happy with. I think that there are a lot of different uses of the city, and, you know, people who are able to make it onto this, even a Zoom call at this time of day, are not the same who might be able to give input early in the morning or late at night when their kids are in bed. So just that's my 2 cents, and thanks again for the opportunity and for the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you, Eva. Okay, Ashley.
Next, we have Elizabeth Day.
Elizabeth.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. Well, my name's Elizabeth Day. I've lived on Westgate Circle for more than 20 years. And Tom, you were mayor when I moved here. Anyway, my clients for the last several decades have been public agencies, urban planners, developers, and architects. So I have some familiarity with the territory we're in. And I was pleased to serve on Planning and Zoning Commission here for some time. And I think I'm repeating some other participants that we have projected revenues in the current proposal, but we haven't seen any numbers for the increased infrastructure and maintenance costs that would offset that. So I think today I was reading the June document from Kay Freezy and Associates detailing the $17 million that it would cost to bring our current wastewater infrastructure up to snuff. And it seems to me that even if all they had to work with was some schematic information, that we could get some reasonably reliable numbers to base our decision making on. And I'm also in the same vein, I'm sure we could figure out what it would cost to double our police department and staff. So forgive me if I'm just repeating other people's remarks. Let's see, on another front, since I'm on Westgate Circle, which is basically in between Timberline Drive and the commercial properties on Bee Cave, and some fine print, there's a note that the new development would propose a reduction in the buffer setbacks between residential properties and commercial property, which is, I think, still at 100 feet.
It is 100 feet right now, although
Right.
several of the buildings, including the one behind you, were built prior to that 100-foot
Right.
ordinance.
that-
So they're 30
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Yeah, so that already does not exist everywhere. In some conversations with the Travis County Appraisal District, I found that they will not consider any reduction in your taxes based on any possibility of commercial development. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it makes your home harder to sell. I think impact of substantial commercial development would not be calculable for probably a year as a result of evidence and how long homes stay on the market and what the eventual selling price of those residences might be. I know that Pegasus, that they said that they could not model the effect on property values, but we've seen a lot of commercial development in Austin. There's bound to be, you know, some historical scenarios that we could base some projection on, although that's
Elizabeth, they have appraisers have a term they use as it's referred to as economic obsolescence, and that is something beyond your property lines that may impact negatively or positively impact the value of your property. So appraisers do consider, now if it's not there, that would be tough, but if it's there, they do consider that, or should consider that anyway. The one thing I want to point out, Elizabeth, I think this is no big deal, but that 17 million is for drainage improvements, and not our wastewater, but our drainage that's Cape Freeze came up with.
oh, okay. Well, my mistake. My mistake.
Well, we don't like to get those two mixed up because one of them's not in a pipe right now, and
Right.
hopefully.
Oh, okay. Well, my apologies for the error.
No,
There
no,
were-
it's
There were
not.
many pages of fine print.
I know. I know the feeling. So
Well,
you
and all those kinds of documents on the city website are very difficult to find.
Yeah.
But
Elizabeth, you live on Westgate. I think you live on the southernmost point overlooking BK's Road, if I'm not mistaken.
well, there's Westgate Circle, Ewing Circle, and Timberline Terrace. I think Timberline Terrace is probably closer to Bee Cave than I am.
Probably, yeah, probably.
Yeah,
is.
yeah, and I know the Mira Vista development was not something many of those residents were very happy about, and I think it was, the height was a surprise, I think. But I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because I'm sure there are a lot of other people that wish to speak, but I think one of my big concerns, and I share this, if we increase our population by 50% or we double it, and all these new residents vote, assuming they vote the same as existing residents, the single family homeowners' voice in the nature of our community is going to be extremely reduced. And I cannot guess what sort of impacts that might have. But lastly, and I realize that we're in planning stages and just gathering data, but at some point, an urban development plan proposal typically includes a comprehensive, might be schematic, but a comprehensive 3D computer model and some eye-level illustrations and renderings for samples of neighborhood and commercial and park development. And that level of information is just very crucial for any informed decisions to be made by the council and the residents. And I think that's very important. So those are my comments, and thank you for listening and your work and your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Ashley?
I saw earlier, Melissa Morrow, your hand was up, but it's not anymore. I just wanted to make sure that if you were wanting to say something, you were able to.
Well, I feel like most people have already said what I would say, and I definitely want to say, so I'm Melissa Morrow. I live at 2502 Timberline Drive. I've been a Rollingwood resident for 22 years. I want to thank all the Strike Force members for their time and willingness to serve the community on a comprehensive plan. And I am very excited about a proactive plan for our city. I think it is really smart of us and a good idea. And just to reiterate what so many people have already said, is that it feels like it's going a little fast in terms of Pegasus, some of their what seem to be recommendations outside of really what the current residents are in favor of. And I think there's there's a little bit of people being worried about who's behind it, and so it's really important for this city to be as transparent as they can about why we are doing this now. Why is it so important? And what, even I know this seems silly, but a couple of times, Tom, I heard you say, well, we're doing this so that we can get what we want on Bee Caves Road. But when you say what we want, it almost sounds like what we want has already been defined by someone. And so I think we just have to be really careful to not let or have people think that it's already there's a group out there, some anonymous group of people that have a predetermined final goal, as opposed to this is really all of us, the 55 on here and the other 1,000 people who live here really are going to be the ones who are going to define what that is. And so I did raise my hand to say that, and I appreciate y'all's time. And I think we just have to keep that door open and keep communicating what we do want to have happen.
Melissa, one of the things that I wanted to, when we started this, I said, look, we're starting with a blank sheet of paper. We have some conditions the city asked us to adhere to when we started, and we'll try to adhere to that. But it was a blank sheet of paper. And when I say we, I mean our community. And the whole purpose of these meetings is to, and other information we get in, is to try to determine what our citizens really do want on that and what they can have. There may be some limitations. And so we all would like a Roof Chris Steakhouse that doesn't charge so much, but that's probably not going to happen. So, but we all have our preferences, but it's a general type of development that we would like to see, redevelopment, and with the understanding that we don't own the property. We have property owners that get to make the final decision on that, but we would do that, and I do appreciate it. And as far as I've seen, we really don't have. I certainly don't have any I haven't even looked at Bee Caves Road from a standpoint of not on that subcommittee, although I think I'm going to participate with them. But if I could walk again, I'm having a little problem walking right now. But that's something that we do that, and we'll have, once we get that information, which is a critical part of this, it'll come back and we'll get some input back from the citizens the same way we're doing this to finalize that. But as far as I know, there's not any, I haven't certainly, the only That's not true. I have talked to the hospital and I've asked them what their plans are, if they have any. So we kind of know what happens with that. And that's generally about the only one. I think that's the only one I've talked to on that. So, but I appreciate that. And Melissa, I appreciate everything you've done for this city. You really put into work when you were in there. So it means a lot.
Well, and I suggest really, if every one of, even if you don't have a public, part that's lengthy at every one of your meetings, I would recommend having maybe the first 10 minutes, give 10 people, 60 seconds to ask a question or clarify something from the previous meeting, something like that. Again, I wouldn't make it a lengthy part of your meeting, but I think that would make everyone feel like they had a voice at every one of your meetings.
Well, we changed that. I changed that on the last meeting to where we had, originally I had citizens' comments on the last part of that, and I put it on the first part. And then we invite comments on each agenda item that comes up. And then we have final citizens' comments on what was done at that meeting. So the whole intent of one big goal of this is to get as much citizen input as we can on that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, at this time, I don't see any new hands raised. I know Mike Wiley had stated that he wanted to speak, but I don't see him in the meeting anymore. And then I still show Brooke Brown. Oh, we have a new one, Daniel Waters. You are able to unmute.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Daniel.
Hey, I live at 4011 Timberline. I'm new to the neighborhood, even though I've kind of raised in Westlake since 5th grade, but we just moved to Rollingwood recently because we're tired of Austin and I love Westlake. So real quick, I just had a couple of questions. I'm not sure if everybody's aware just the reason why this came about to begin with. And I'm not too sure if I'm fully up to date on why is it that we're trying to build, 17 million in revenue. Is it?
Well, the primary, Daniel, the primary goal of what we're doing as a comprehensive plan, there is a financial aspect to that, but the primary goal is not to raise any dollar amount of money. The primary goal is to determine a long-term plan for our city and to address our citizens' issues as they come up on both residential and commercial properties on that, is what we want our city to look like in the future.
Okay.
There is in any comprehensive plan, there is a financial portion of that, of a comprehensive plan. But the primary purpose is to do a long-term plan to reflect the wishes of our citizens on that, or what we want our city to look like.
Sure. Okay. I think when I got the Pegasus report the first time, I had a couple of discussions with some neighbors, but they had looked at it too. And I think one of the things that I got the impression that based on the Pegasus report, that there were certain levels of revenue that we're going to be generating by different types of development and density that's going to be created. And then I had been talking to somebody about it, and it was like, yeah, we need really to build that revenue because we need that money to create a detention system for the whole neighborhood that we're having water issues, and because of the new developments and the impervious cover that's being created, and it's causing more and more runoff. And that's the reason for the Pegasus report was my impression. So, am I off on that, or is it?
Well, Amber, do you have the original proposal they did for Pegasus as to what they bid on? Pegasus was doing some modeling that had financial aspect to that in there, Daniel, but they also were going to help with a comprehensive plan. And again, that's only a portion of the plan. And in my mind, that's putting the cart before the horse. I don't have a dollar amount that I'm shooting for.
Sure.
I would rather it's up to the city council and the mayor and the city staff to determine how we get to a funding level that they need on that. Now, any kind of capital expenditures we do, be it drainage, be it city hall or whatever, those are going to require the citizens vote on to determine whether they want that. And the city will be responsible for going forward and showing that that's a need and this is how we raise the money to do it, that this is the best way to raise the money. Obviously, you can always raise money if the citizens stand for it, it's by raising taxes.
Sure.
And up to a level, and then you get into a voting issue on that too. So the city has some responsible. Now, do we have some needs in the city that we need to address? Absolutely. We all know that, that we'd like to address. But when we get 80% of our tax income from our 80% of our income from ad valorem taxes, you know, that's you and I paying those taxes. And if there's a way to offset that without hurting our neighbors, then that's something we're trying to look at. But that's not a, there's not a goal mark that we have to shoot for that's going to tell us you have to raise X amount of money.
Right.
Originally, I think Pegasus had in their contract, and Amber, if you're still on here, their original charge from the city was slightly different than that, wasn't it? They were just doing modeling. They weren't making a proposal to the city. They were just doing modeling. If you do this, if you build X, Y, Z, you raise X amount of money is what they were trying to model.
Right. They were just showing us models, and to add to what Mayor Farrell said, Danny, the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's kind of unusual that Rollingwood doesn't have a comprehensive plan. Most cities do, and they use that as their guiding document when they're making decisions about the community. And they started having a few commercial developers coming to them asking for variances from in different uses within our code. And they kept asking, they wanted some sort of direction from the community as to, you know, what development they wanted to see along BK Road. And that in combination with a recommendation from the rating agency to continue our planning efforts, that also was the impetus for this plan.
Okay. One in the Pegasus report, I noticed there was one thing missing, and that is the fact that which has been changing in the last 2 to 3 years, but has there been any kind of projection or input about the current residential construction that's happening here in terms of the valuations? Because we're going from properties that are being valued at 1.5 to post-construction, we're looking at 5 to 6 million now. And so I didn't see in Pegasus report of the new development that's happening here, that what type of effects these new valuations are going to have on the new construction for tax.
That's an interesting question, Daniel, because remember the Central Texas Appraisal District they kept the values the same last year. And so when they come out with the new valuations, is it going to be this year or next year, Amber?
I think next year.
Next year. Then those will be reflected into our budget on that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because in the future, just looking at the future pro forma of all the redevelopment that's going to occur, because, you know, we're taking a house that's 1,700 to 2,500 feet, we're turning it into 6,000 to 7,000 feet, and we're adding about $3 to $4 million in value to it. So when the Travis Appraisal comes out to appraise these new properties, it's going to have a different picture for us in the future in terms of revenue. And I think that's something that was not looked at by Pegasus that should be, because I think that our revenue is going to go sky high. Personally, I mean, I'm just seeing what's happening in the market right now, I think the existing properties are probably going to be just fine. But the new construction, that is the new sell prices, are going to change that a lot, I think.
Good point.
The other question I had, and I just have so many questions, but I'm just going to give you a couple more. I didn't see in the Pegasus report any kind of TIA, a traffic impact analysis, on what this new development. And they didn't do that, I'm sure, because that's pretty expensive to do.
Well, and no, they didn't do it because we don't know what that new development will look like.
Right.
They were only doing a fiscal modeling.
Right.
They weren't proposing any certain kind of development. It was just, here's an estimate of what, we think this will bring as far as revenues.
I think when you take a look at proposing this to the neighborhood, I think one of the top 3 is going to be what's going to happen to Rollingwood Drive in terms of the traffic impact. If you do what they're talking about in Pegasus, you're going to get major congestion at Bee Cave and Mopac. That's pretty much common sense. The alternative route's going to be Rollingwood Drive. And so Rollingwood Drive is going to turn into a freeway, basically, with the extra 4,000 to 5,000, 6,000 people that their proposal's putting here. So I don't know. I just think that if we do get to that point, I think it's important to do a TIA and impact what is Rollingwood Drive going to look like, and make sure everybody in the neighborhood knows that their traffic's going to change. And I think that's going to have a lot to do with people's decisions on where they want to see this go, I would imagine.
No, Mike Wiley lives on Rollingwood Drive, and that was a concern of his that he voiced to me earlier.
Yeah.
And I think he said he had something he had to go to tonight. He's not going to be here for very long. But that's been an issue in Rollingwood as long as I've lived here, is to do a timing study as to how long it takes you to get from Rollingwood Drive to Mopac via Bee Caves versus Rollingwood Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've done some informal timing on that. And we've actually had a traffic, I think in 2001, we did a traffic calming study to determine how we might slow that traffic down. As I recall, and Melissa, I think you were there then, weren't you? She's not on here.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of the thoughts at that time were to put in both crosswalks and speed bumps on Rollingwood Drive. And as I recall, and it's been 20 years now, good gracious, Melissa, I must have been a young man at that time. The citizens came out and did not want traffic humps or bumps on Rollingwood Drive. And so we ended up not doing it.
Yeah, like they do on Ridgewood.
Yeah, well, times change, and that doesn't mean it's not something to revisit, but that's at the time that was not something that the people that lived on Rollingwood Drive wanted. So
last and final, I know when new development comes in, they have to either buy out of detention or they have to input their own detention into their lot if they go over 250 square feet of existing impervious. So, and maybe manager could answer this question, city manager, on this, but where has that money been going? What is it currently being used for? If you buy out, it's $6.50 a square foot. So for a 6,000 foot house, it's about 42,000 to buy out of the detention pond for new construction. So I'm wondering, have we taken a look at that revenue, and where is that going? And is that being put into a detention account having to do with it?
Yes, the ordinance actually specifies that those it's split up into 8 zones, Rollingwood is, and whatever whoever buys that RSDP, then that money goes back to that zone. And so first we work on, so then the city uses that money to make the necessary improvements to deal with the water through our right of way. So it's very specific as to what it can be used for. We couldn't just put it in the general operating budget and run our police department on it. We have only issued a handful. I'm trying to think, maybe even 5. And we've made those improvements. So I think we've got about $82,000 in zone 7.
How many houses under construction are we going to have this year?
Right now we have 60 homes under construction, but the construction wave has kind of been happening since 2012. And so we're estimating that a lot of the homes have already undergone redevelopment.
Okay. And how many lots do we have in Rolling Wood?
It's about roughly 525 residential.
I'm just trying to think if there's, these fees that.
Oh, Danny, you hit mute accidentally, I think.
Lost it.
But the fees that are captured by the builders that they're doing the new developments, is there a way to work with them more on, I know I did on-site detention. I did underground detention on my house, thinking it was going to save me money, and it just doesn't. So
the issue we run into with that program comes down to easements. We have a lack of dedicated easements. And so anytime we establish a little regional drainage project, which is that's what those funds do, we have to make sure we have all the easements in place. If we don't, we're really not able to do the project. We can't put water where we don't have an easement.
Okay.
Amber, I think that not all lots qualify for an off-site pricing, because the engineers have to review that first and decide that that is a viable option. Some of them, they don't agree to that. I think that's, but it is, the engineers have to approve off-site fees as opposed to on-site detention on that. Wouldn't you say, isn't that correct, Amber?
Yes, that's true. And the number one hurdle in approving that off-site drainage is dedicated easements to the city.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate all your help, all your hard work.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, David Raymond. See that your hand is up.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm a member of Strike Force. I'm a resident of Timberline and also a member of the Parks Commission. I was writing some notes today on some of the things I've been reading between the meetings I've been able to attend and coming into this one. And, I keep stumbling over an issue that I'm personally having as far as what our scope is, what it is, our role as Strike Force members. And I keep hearing, what I do hear and agree with is that our focus is to be getting as much information from out to our residents, but mainly getting a survey that's comprehensive enough to get a real good, clear picture of what our residents want. And what I'm running into in these meetings that we've been having up, and in this one included, in the ones I've been on, is we're spending a lot of time on analyzing utilities and analyzing drainage and analyzing revenue sources and stuff like that, but we haven't determined what it is that everyone wants in the first place. And I would think having the survey would be a new survey, because I agree with everyone else that had mentioned, we had talked about the survey today and up until this point, that the previous one was not adequate. And you can read the letters that have been coming in, and everyone seems to agree that it's not adequate. So an adequate survey will direct where we go with these other things that we're analyzing in subcommittees on drainage and such, and revenues and such. If there's no point talking about what the impacts of a hotel would do in Rollingwood if 95% of Rollingwood doesn't want hotels. We're not going to we're not going to put up a hotel. So it seems almost kind of cart before the horse-ish to me that I would think prior to number one, and I heard it today, is a comprehensive survey from our residents is the primary drive right now, and which will in turn get to all those financial aspects that I know that we're supposed to address some of that too, but it's hard to address the financial aspects before we know the direction we want to go for our citizens. And what I saw over the letters, and this is just what I've noticed. I've maybe read about 30 letters that come in the past 2 weeks, and there's been a big consensus on several items. One, most everyone wants either a limited or even a sunsetted involvement from Pegasus at this point. And I tend to agree with them for a lot of the points that have already been made. I'm not going to make them again. Most people want a limited CRE and residential growth in our area. They don't want high density. They don't want high rise. And basically, most people would just prefer to have a little better restaurants, better shops. Okay, that seems reasonable. No one wants this to be Austin. We don't want Rollingwood to be Austin. The great thing about it, and one of the things that really pushes Rollingwood's value, in my opinion, is its proximity to Austin, but then you can get away from it. You can get away from Austin. You don't feel like you're in that city. And that's one of the things I've discussed with other people in the neighborhood as one of the things I like about it. I can go 20 minutes and walk into Zilker or get on an Uber and be in Austin for 10 minutes and have my Austin experience. And then I can leave and I come back to Rollingwood and have our experience, which is really, that to me is a big value and something that I want to protect personally. I have issues with some of the proposals in development. Basically, it's just an old adage, it's easy to say no, but if you say yes, it's hard to take back and go back to no once you say yes. So, I mean, a very measured approach that development in this neighborhood that got as much of the citizenry to have their input, and that's our charge. That was our charge from the beginning. What do the citizens want? How do we organize that and present that to the city council? And to me, how it gets paid for over time, whether it be bonds or sales tax or new developments, and that's really an ongoing city council issue, not necessarily what the advisory committee that the strike force is supposed to be coming up with. Those are just some of the points that I felt like I wanted to make, but I will go on mute at this point.
Thank you, David. They're very well presented points on that. Ashley, do we have anybody else?
Yes, Colin Harvey, you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Name's Colin Harvey. I'm a new resident to Rollingwood. Our family moved here to 4903 South Crest in July. from several years over in Zilker Park and then several years downtown as well. First, I wanted to thank all of you for everything that you're doing. Second, David, you couldn't have summarized how we came to move from Zilker to Rollingwood better in terms of the perfect placement that it has. I also think you really summarized what it seems to be, just from talking to other people and reading other correspondence, just the crux of what everyone's seems to be sort of upset. And so it seems like sort of common sense. So I'm going to ask maybe kind of a dumb question, I guess, to Tom or whomever. What is the impediment to a comprehensive objective survey that feeds a comprehensive plan of action that sits in front of anything that seems so much further down the line, such as some of the remarks around the Pegasus outputs? Are there any obstacles, or maybe we're all in violent support of the same objectives and methods to get there?
My concern was, by issuing a survey in December with all the Christmas and everything going on, we would not get as good of feedback as we would get if we issued it in January. And that was really my biggest concern that I had on that. You know, it's something to consider as to when we issue that. We only have, I think I have one meeting in December that's coming up. And then we'll be gone until January. And that's why I did not want to issue the survey in December. I could do it in December, I suspect, get high behind and get that done. I've been given several sample surveys from residents, which I think are very good. And I could bring those to our committee and we could start working on that. But I thought January was a better time to do it, just given what was going on with everything for us to get back the input I thought we necessary to do this. And that may not be right. And I'm not above to say I'm wrong. So if
no, and I had no opinion on the timing other than or no awareness. I'm kind of inserting myself, into learning about the process kind of along the way. So I had no comment other than what you just said there. Sounds pretty darn logical. So my question is more just a general process one that just says, if we're going to follow the I guess the premise of we're just going to do the right thing and do it in the right amount of time that it takes to do it, then start the survey in January, and you could follow the process from there.
David made some good points, and I'm listening, and I will make sure that our committee knows about that, because I think that was some good points. And certainly we had some data from the Pegasus survey, whether it was the best or not, but there is some data in there. They had a large sampling, or 53%, I believe, although the questions were not questions that I think were detailed enough and may not have been as direct enough to our citizens to get the right amount of feedback. But we will do that, and I will certainly I'm not listen, if somebody has a comment that helps us get this down the road, I'm willing to listen. And I think our committee is open to listening. And I know we've had several of our committee members that wanted to start on a survey right away on that. And that's something that we'll discuss at our next meeting, as the timing of that. So we have discussed it some, but I think that's the comments I've heard tonight are, I take those to heart, and we'll certainly consider and see what we can do with that. And I did get your email on that, and I appreciate that. It was well written. So
I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for being so thoughtful in your responses.
All right, Brooke Brown, your hand is up.
Oh, it shouldn't be.
Okay. No worries. It looks like Amy Patillo, your hand is up.
Hi.
Oh, Amy.
I've really benefited from hearing the discussion tonight, and especially just want to appreciate David Raymond. Thank you for going through all of the comments and really pulling out the highlights like you did. I think that you really acknowledged a lot of the overarching themes that I saw as I was looking through the emails, but I think you articulated it in a way that I hope helps our community know that there are real individuals who are their neighbors, who are spending time reading all these comments and trying to work hard to get to an end result. So I really appreciate that and just wanted to acknowledge that. I really try to go through all the emails and do a similar thing, and you did a great job. So I'm gonna use what you did as my starting point. And the other comment I was gonna make is just I've heard people commenting on how there's a hope for another survey. And I also hope for another survey because I will say that, Pegasus did an initial set of calls. I think there were maybe 30 or 40 different individuals they did calls with to talk about issues that different people thought were important to put in the survey. And most of the questions that I wanted to see in the survey were about transportation. And I really didn't see much in there that would help me as one of the transportation liaisons know where our community is headed and what we want as far as transportation. And as a group, I appreciate Melissa's comment, the what we want. We Rollingwood, those of us who live here now and are participating. So I don't have a pre-decided answer, but some of the things that I would really love to hear feedback from in our community would be things that have come up as we've tried to work on the Bee Cave Road project over the years and continue to try to have dialogue with TxDOT about them funding it. Some of the big kind of value type things would we move towards more of a shared driveway type of situation among businesses that aren't part of a PUD? Is that something that our community would value, putting safer driveways on Bee Caves Road and allowing some changes in how businesses are able to develop their properties in order to accommodate those shared driveways and safer driveways on Bee Caves Road? And that also then gets into the drainage on Bee Caves Road and adding pedestrian access and so many different things. So I feel like there really are some opportunities to do a survey that could help us understand where people are on a lot of different issues. And I appreciate, Tom, that you're taking feedback on those survey questions. And just wanted to throw out that one because that's one that I really hoped to have gained input on and didn't get it in the initial survey. So I know that there was maybe a perception that the city council got to decide what was in the survey, and we gave input, but not all of our input was taken. So thanks for the opportunity to comment.
And Amy, to those that don't know, Amy has done an incredible job with working with TxDOT and the toll authority on MOPAC that put Rollingwood Rollingwood is boxing above its weight class. I'll just tell you that because of the work that Amy and Wendy have done with both those agencies on that. They know who we are. Thank you again, Amy.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. We have Jeff Marks.
Jeff?
Hi, guys. I'm back. And thank you for that, Amy. I guess this is more of a rhetorical question, but I am curious. So, Amy just had those comments about her questions on the survey not being reflected in her questions in the survey not being reflected in the initial survey. So it does just kind of draw the question, who exactly does Pegasus report to if, council members' input isn't being taken? But I'll move on. So thank you to David and Colin for your points earlier. I thought those were really helpful. And David, you really summarized, I totally second everything that you mentioned earlier. And Danny also brought up some great points on drainage and impervious cover. So just introducing myself to the group a bit, my wife, Lainey, and I are building a house on 2516 Timberline. We didn't know the first thing about building, construction, anything when we bought the lot. It was a crash course. We wanted to move in and get into Eanes as quickly, into the schools as quickly as possible. So building our house, the impervious cover restrictions, we had no idea that that was going to exist when we bought the lot. And they have been tough to work around, but we have made it work. And, to be honest, we would do it all over again. And now that I'm being part of this process, I'm really understanding why the impervious cover restrictions are there in the first place. Seeing, the drainage issues in other parts of the city, I'm able to better understand the situation. And makes me feel a lot better about the water retention tank that we're putting in now that I understand the purpose of it. So reading the IIP, there are some, legit drainage upgrading that needs to happen. I've heard anecdotal evidence of, water gushing into people's yards, and I've seen videos of it. I've heard mention of it on the council meetings. So I definitely understand that there's a need for this. But one thing I would like to raise, that if the residents are being asked to pay for these upgrades through either taxes or development, we should think about how to address making sure these issues don't get worse in the future. So I would encourage council to allow the strike force to look into figuring out how to prevent drainage from getting worse in the future. We just want to make sure that, if we're going to pay to fix a problem, that problem doesn't get worse again, because, we've kind of got one shot at this. We can't keep going back to the bond markets over and over again. We got to make sure that our money and our investment is really efficient and is being used to its full potential. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome into Rollingwood.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited for this pandemic to move on and get moved in. And it's been amazing so far. Amazing neighborhood. I love meeting and working with everyone. So many really smart, intelligent people in this community.
Amber?
It looks like next we have Phil McDuffie. Your hand is up.
I did not mean for my hand to be up. I don't know. So.
Okay. It looks like then we have covered everyone. If your hand is up and you still want to talk, go ahead and unmute now. I think we've covered everyone who's got their hand raised.
Anybody else? Any other comments, even if you've spoke before, if you'd like to speak?
It looks like we do have a new hand up, Mary McMahon.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you all so much. This has been very informative. And my only comment is, when we do the survey, if there could be some background provided so that people that haven't heard, the Zoom or been to the meetings would know something about the financial situation, the water and wastewater, the traffic detention, increase in property valuation. It would have to be, I know, very, concise, but I think that would be very helpful if somehow in the survey or along with the survey, they could have some history. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Elizabeth Day, it looks like your hand is back up.
Yes, just briefly. Do I understand correctly that the plan includes a lot of rental property in the new development on Bee Cave? Or is it just condos?
Really neither one right now, Elizabeth. The modeling that Pegasus did was strictly a hypothetical model, a financial model that showed what could happen and how much income that would bring to the city. There's not a proposal from our group is just starting on this, so we haven't made any recommendations about use on that. There are some restrictions that we had that the city council directed us on the north side of BK's Road to where we would have no more than 2 stories on the north side of BK's Road.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I guess the proposal is just more general and might.
It was a financial model that Pegasus did, and it did not include several things, as speakers have brought forth on that. But that was not a proposal for development. It was just, it's my understanding that it was a financial model of what income the city could get if they did this development like they asked to do on that, or where they put in the model, their assumptions on that. And as John Hinton has pointed out, and I hope I pointed out, a lot of that, wasn't going to happen regardless, because we didn't have the capacity, potential capacity to do all of that. So it was not a, it's my understanding, and unfortunately I was not here when Pegasus presented their model and when they were done, but reading it and trying to understand how we got there with Pegasus on this model, was my understanding it was strictly a financial modeling technique, and it wasn't a proposal. And Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't at those meetings.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not a proposal. It's only a financial model, and the community gets to move the dials on that model to fit the community.
And
okay, well, that gives me a better understanding. I understood that, there was a lot of flexibility on what these taller or additional buildings might.
The city council was very specific on our charge to our committee was no more than 2 stories on the north side of BK's Road.
Oh, okay.
Call it a charge or a suggestion that it would be not well received by the city council. Put it both ways. I took it as a charge when somebody tells me that.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd better look at it again, because I thought that our rental population might increase.
Yeah, they had that in the model. They did have that in their model. But whether or not the city would accept that was a different story. And I think that David has pointed out strongly that the city reacted very strongly to that they did not care for that. So
okay.
I think the city council heard and reacted to that. So we have our charge is no more than 2 stories on the north side of BK's Road.
Well, that's interesting. I guess one reason I posed the question is that if our local policy about rental property may change, if you might include a question on any new survey on whether or not residents would approve of permitting additional dwelling units or garage apartments, which we currently do not have.
And that's a fair question, I think, and that may differ from that. I'm really, as we do this survey, we'll take that into account. They call those, used to call them mother-in-law plans, but I don't know if they do that.
I think they call them ADUs now for additional dwelling units.
Oh.
Anyway, it would tie in if rental property is gonna have a
Well, it would take some changes in Rollingwood, because we do have restrictions on non-family members, the number of non-family members living in one dwelling.
Well, yeah,
there's a lot of ordinances we have about that. And
I know.
So
I know, and also no buildings that are not connected to the existing foundation. So, Yeah,
Well, there's-
can't build a tiny house in your backyard. Okay, well, I just thought it would tie in if those policies might change. Oh, and also my apologies, I misunderstood your question earlier. I am not on the southernmost end of Westgate Circle.
That's right, you're not. I know.
I am on the western
Uh,
side of Westgate
okay.
Circle. And
Yep.
I overlook the Palisades drainage field, which is
I knew you were right there at it, but I just I couldn't
right.
remember exactly where. But I
well, it's a nice big green space now. Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for your mayorship in the past, both times.
Yeah, it's seems like a long time ago. So.
Oh, I don't count years anymore. I just prefer to just say, oh, decades.
I know the feeling.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
All right, Gail Rosenthal, you can unmute.
I think I'm unmuted, am I?
You are.
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I can't see my little hand tonight, so I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. I'm at 311 Nixon, which is right behind the park, for those of you who don't know me. And Tom, it's good to see you again. It's been a while. Back in the saddle, it seems.
Well, just a half a saddle on this one.
Well, I want to apologize. I'm a little out of the loop on this issue because I was in New York for about 3 months with a new grandchild. So thank you. So I'm not up to snuff on some of the issues, but so I hope this isn't too repetitive, but I do have some questions. First of all, I do have a property that is impacted by heavy drainage and flooding right behind the park. I've seen a lot of erosion in some bad years. The city did take some steps. They're not really adequate because that culvert is not deep enough. The water just does not get handled. It can become unsightly and it can damage the trees. That's kind of, I don't want to be nitpicky about it. The city did improve the situation. But I do wonder, because there's so much floodplain along Rollingwood Drive, how any increase in impervious cover is going to make our situation worse. I just don't really understand how development can even be taken out and replaced with all of the floodplain that's along there. I know if this were in Austin, it would be very, very strict. And secondly, I have some familiarity with comprehensive planning in Austin on the east side of town because I own property over there. I'm a lawyer and a broker, and I've watched it for 20 years. I can tell you the boundaries of some of the neighborhood planning areas, which were done under comprehensive planning. And the city of Austin still didn't even finish the whole city before it was on to another code next and, another iteration. And it's a mess. It creates its own set of bureaucratic headaches. And I'm not sure that it really benefited the neighborhood over there. It benefits developers. It benefits some property owners, especially those on commercial strips. It increases the value of more dense development because the airspace becomes valuable. And it increases traffic. It does increase revenue. It drives values up, especially if you put condominiums in. This will drive the values of our private homes sky high, or they're already sky high. That may be good or bad depending on your point of view. But I guess my basic question is, what development is currently allowed under our current zoning regime? And why do we even have to consider comprehensive planning and zoning? Don't we have more control by saying no under our current regime? I think we would have more control to get what our residents would like to have without saying yes to comprehensive planning and zoning. It's just very easy to say yes, but I personally, from what I've seen happen in neighborhoods where there is comprehensive planning, I would just say no. And so I'm asking you, Tom, what's possible, or whoever else is in charge of the code. I'm not really familiar with it. So what's allowed now, and why can't we simply guide those property owners with the code that we have?
Well, we could, and that is an option to do. We currently have on BK's Road, we have residential zoning, which is
on BK Road.
No, we do have a couple of residents that are actually abutting BK's Road that are residential.
I see.
That is zoned residential. But we also have, I'm trying to remember now, and Amber, I may need your help on this one. We have C1 and C2. We have the church zoning, and we have 2 PUDs, which is Rollingwood Town Center and Mara Vista. And we have the hospital district zoning. Did I cover them all? So
Yes.
take out the hospital, take out the PUDs, and take out the, because they're all newly built, and take out the church site. And so you've got C1 and C2. And C1 is got, you're allowed to build office space on C1. C2, you're allowed to build, and it's a pyramid zoning system. You're allowed to build retail on, I believe, on C2. Is that not correct, Amber?
I believe so, yes.
Yes. So I'd have to look at all the permitted uses, and there are exclusions on that.
Mm-hmm.
The question, Gail, that came up is that really what we want, is more office space on BK's Road? Some of the things that we're hearing back from our citizens is they want restaurants and retail that they can walk to on BK's Road, or short drive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'd ever walk down there, but if I drive down there or ride a bike down, do that. But that's what we're trying to do, is to figure out what we want, what you want, what we all want on Rollingwood to look like in the future. Not what it looks like now, but what it looks like in the future. And it may be that we choose, that maybe that the best option on some properties is, hey, exactly what it is right now. But we're also going to be looking at residential, the residential side of Rollingwood too. Is there some changes in our building code, drainage criteria that we may recommend to the P&Z, and then they recommend it to the council in a comprehensive plan? You recognize that we have a drainage issue. And so that would be one of the things that we would look at and say, okay, we need to address drainage issues. And we have a drainage plan that Karen Freeze did, Kate Freeze did. And so that's kind of, it's a all encompassing what we want Rollingwood to be like in the future. And that's both residential and commercial sides. And it doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It just, because as you know, private property owners have a right to do with their property what legally they can do. And we can't take rights away from property owners very easily in Texas, which I'm glad to see. But mm-hmm. that's what we end up having to look at. yes, there are drainage issues we have to address, both in residential and commercial sides, and our streets that we do have to deal with. But there's also an opportunity, and I view this as an opportunity to help guide Rollingwood development in the future, not what's there, to what we really want to be. Our zoning code is fairly open when it comes to what can be built right now. It can be, there's a lot of differencing type of structures that could go there that would still comply with our code. And that may not be what we want to see, what would our citizens want to see. Or it may be that that's what they want to see. Once we get the citizens' input, I think we'll be able to better determine what our recommendations would be to the council and to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think my concern after witnessing what I've seen go on the east side of town, so much rezoning of property, downzoning, upzoning, picking winners and losers. I know Rollingwood is not that big, but what I see happening and if you want to see neighborhood plans, go on the austintexas.gov website and look up the various neighborhood plans. They're long, voluminous documents with a lot of verbiage, not much mandate, and they become a huge albatross, and they don't necessarily. I'm not a believer in comprehensive planning. I don't believe in comprehensive immigration reform. I don't believe in comprehensive zoning reform. I think you take a problem, you deal with a problem, and you sit with it and you recognize the impact it's going to have on the rest of your zoning code or your land development code. And you work with it in small ways. But when you try to do these comprehensive plans, I think there are just a lot of unintended consequences and things that get overlooked and confounded. So I'm not for that approach. Maybe it's just my nature, but I've seen enough of it, and I'm not opposed to change. I love shops. I love restaurants. I love to walk down to places and have a latte. I'm just not convinced that comprehensive planning and zoning is the right tool. So I'll sign off now. Thank you so much, Tom.
Good to see you.
Thank you, everyone else that I don't know as well as I know Tom. I know there's a lot of hard work going on there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gail. Ashley?
We have Diana Wallace. You can unmute. Diana, if you're wanting to speak, I can see your hand up. On the bottom of your screen should be an option to unmute. All right, we also have Daniel Waters. Your hand is raised again.
Hey, I'm back. So I was, David, I really like what you had to say earlier a whole bunch, because I think that's kind of where we're at on everything but I went to high school here, started in 5th grade, 1979. And Rollingwood hasn't changed one bit. I mean, it's still got the old Gaddy shop right here at Bee Cave. It's got all the old same buildings. The only thing that's changed is across the street on the south side of Bee Cave over there. But otherwise, pretty much Westlake and Rollingwood hasn't changed a bit. I'm trying to figure out why now, who and what group or who are the individuals that are saying, hey, we need to give Rollingwood not just a facelift, but we need to give it an overhaul. And what's the purpose in it? If, we all moved here, we all live here because we do love the small town feel. We like the I agree that buildings need to be updated, but I'm not sure if, they need to be torn down and big, apartment buildings or office with retail needs to be put in its place. But I'm just trying to figure out what has changed in the last, since this was created, whose idea was it and why did it come up? Because, it's been going good here for a lot of, since the 70s. So Thomas, you would probably know the answer to that question better than anybody because you've been around the longest, but when
Daniel, I recognize I'm old, and that's okay.
I'm old too. I got gray, see. When I was so excited to move back here, because every time I drive into Westlake, I feel like home, And I told my wife, I was like, man, I'm so glad that they didn't come in here and just redevelop all this to make it look like South Congress, because, it does, if you did, it would take away that feel of home. And I know that's personal. Not everybody's going to feel that way, but I'm trying to get at why now? What's the.
Well, I think there's several reasons. One, we actually did a type of comprehensive plan back in 1999, I believe. And, that's 21 years old.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at this as kind of revival of extending that. And it wasn't a true comprehensive plan, but it was our attempt at doing it back in 1999 on that.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to look at is not what is there now, but there's going to be change on BK's Road. I think that we're going to see some buildings be change ownership and change uses potentially, or maybe the same uses, but we have an opportunity as a city to kind of say, okay, this is what we would like to see there. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen, because the ultimate deal is the property owner is going to, they may love what they have and keep it, and that's fine. There's nothing we're going to say or do about that, or nor should we say or do anything about that. But there's an opportunity for our citizens to say, this is what I would really like to have that would improve my quality of life in Rollingwood. And that's the whole intent of this. And then address some issues that we know are out there that we need to address.
Yeah.
Utility issues, drainage issues, traffic issues that some of our residents do have. There is a lot of traffic, cut through traffic that we have. And we've been dealing with that for as long as I've been in Rollingwood, but it's getting more acute on that. So it gives us an opportunity to take a pause and just say, regardless of what's there, regardless of what each of us want, what does our community want to our city to look like in the future, both residential and commercial on that. And so it's not a blueprint that says this is what you're going to do as a property owner. This is just saying this is what the community is looking at, they'd like to see there. And yes, retail brings in, and restaurants bring in more money to the city. They have a cost to the city through traffic and noise and odors that might occur. But that's part of what we have to look at to determine whether or not this is a suitable, what our citizens really want there or not. So it's not this isn't a development plan as per se, because we're not going to tell these owners what they can put there. We're just saying this is what the city would like to see as a use of properties that might be there on that. I hope that.
No, it's good. I just know that it always seems to me, and when I look at the history of things, it really all just comes down to money. And
well, I will tell you, as you know, we're basically downtown Austin. So we have that's a driving force for any developer to do that. But they have to know, and I think what precipitated this originally, Daniel, is that a developer purchased a piece of property and wanted to submit a plan to the city. And I don't know I was not enrolling. I was gone during that period of time when they did that. And I don't know his name, and I've never met him, don't know who it is. But I understand that there was a developer that submitted a plan or proposal on a piece of property, and that wasn't, they asked for a variance. And I don't think it went anywhere, but that's what kind of precipitated, gee, we ought to just look at this, and before that happens, determine what we're going to recommend on each property that we have on BK's Road. And don't forget, there's a big residential aspect of this too, because as you know, we have some issues with both traffic and drainage for our residential areas. And that has to be looked at too, as we go through this.
I agree. I think we need to fix any type of detention problems that we may have with area detention and et cetera, et cetera. I think we do need to look at that, of course, but I'm just trying to figure out from a standpoint of what has changed revenue wise and expense wise in Rollingwood over the last 10, 15 years that because I feel like we're pointing in this direction for a financial reason rather than for we all want to see this really cool, apartment mixed use facility kind of thing. I'm not sure if from what I talk to neighbors is they could care less about some developer coming in, building a new retail multi-use facility. They moved here because they love it. That's small and quiet. And I'm just trying to figure out, is this because, and what has changed for Rollingwood in terms of its revenue and expense? Are we in trouble here? Do we find ourselves losing revenue? And
if we want, there are certain things that citizens have indicated they want, and that we're looking at that cost a lot of money. And on that aspect is new to a certain degree. I mean, Rollingwood was developed, frankly, as I would say suburban, but it was really developed to rural standards for the most part, because our drainage is by our streets, for example. And once you hit a certain number of houses, the streets are just not going to handle that kind of drainage. So you have to deal with the drainage problems. We've had drainage problems ever since I've lived in Rollingwood.
Yeah.
On that, and we've had to piecemeal the fix on it where we could, but now we're looking at maybe doing a true fix. And there comes a time when you have Rollingwood has always tried to live within its budget, which we have. But we haven't been able to fix the bigger issues that come in. And that's something that that the city council is looking at now, whether we as voters vote for that, because any bond issue, remember, we're the final decision makers on whether we do a project when it comes to a capital bond. Because if we can't get convinced that it's a good deal, we don't vote for it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But there are things that should occur. We do have some water lines that still need to be replaced. And how we go about finding the funds to do that without raising taxes, which is an easy way to do it. Since I'm not on council right now, I can say, yeah, it's easy to raise taxes, but they probably disagree with that. But it's, you can raise fees and water fees and do whatever you're going to do, but you can only raise them so much where it becomes a burden to our citizens on that. And I think one of the lifelong deals that I've been in Rollingwood is to try to keep us as a multi-generational city, and we don't force people out because they can't afford to live in Rollingwood. And they may have opportunities to not live here, but at least from a tax standpoint, they don't get forced out because of Rollingwood.
Yeah.
School tax is another matter and we can't control that, but that's a different animal. But I hope that answered your question as to how this got started. And, you know, yes, there's going to be development pressure, I would imagine, on redevelopment pressure on BK's Road. And it's better that we get in front of that rather than play catch up, in my opinion. But, you know, am I for redeveloping and tearing down all the buildings on BK's? Absolutely not. But,
sure.
You know, it's up to the property owners, and property owners, you know, they've been citizens of Rollingwood. Some of them have owned property longer than I've lived in Rollingwood, and I moved here in 1980.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, no, that's fine. I just, I think that our goal then would be to find a happy medium that would satisfy the revenue needs that we have and also satisfy the neighbor's desire and to see what they want to be built here without overbuilding and causing more.
Well, frankly, my first criteria is that we kind of go the other way. We go with what our citizens want, and then whatever revenue it generates, that's up to the city council to determine how they raise the money to do the projects that they need to do.
Yeah.
But I appreciate.
Can I interject? Because this is an interesting conversation, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm in full agreement of having a comprehensive plan. There was some discussion about not liking having a comprehensive plan by other people who called in, but I mean, in basics, for what I see, it justifies all our decisions going, you know, in the short term, in the long term. You know, so when that developer does come, be it this year or 10 years from now, we have a plan. Say, no, we as a citizenry decided that we're going to go either yes or no on this particular development or this particular project. And you can imagine the same scenario going 4 and 5, 6 years ahead. Someone calls and asks us, why aren't we going to do this development? And we like, well, we don't know. We don't have a plan. We didn't have a plan in place. We're just going to say no. And that doesn't sound reasonable. It wouldn't be reasonable to tell a developer that or any other interested party. So, I mean, having a comprehensive plan focuses our energy and priorities that was determined by our residents. And here it is. Here's the and plans change, but at least we have a working format, some outline that most of the residents agree on. And then, so whenever those questions arise, you have to refer to our plan. And our plan is this, and 85% of the residents say they want it this way or that way. And that's where we go. And that, to me, is the bottom line.
Well said again, David.
I mean, I second that. I mean, we're not talking about a whole lot of property here. You know, we're talking about a pretty small section on BK Road. I think we can manage that pretty easily with a comprehensive plan. And you know, I'm sure later down the road, we'll get into how we want to, you know, look at developing our residential lots. If we're overloading them with impervious cover that's causing drainage issues, that's something that we probably need to look at too. But, you know, in due time. But yeah, I think comprehensive plan is
great.
This is Brian Sen. I just wanted to speak up while we're here. I've been here since 1999. I think Tom Farrell was my first mayor. He was then my mayor again later. During that time in 99, we were actually going from septic to sewer. And my house had a big problem with that, where I'm situated over on Vance Lane by the Zilker Clubhouse. We had some drainage issues and some other things. But one of the things with impervious cover that we're having is because of the move over to sewer, and we're building bigger and bigger houses now, which is all great. But what I'm saying, and then again, when I think it's Mira Vista, but where Trader Joe's is, Randall's was going to go in there at one time. The developer also wanted multifamily housing in there. The community got together. We were not going to go for multifamily housing. Tom helped, I think, was part of that leadership as well. He's helped lead us through some very critical problems or crisis areas that we've seen. It's allowed us to grow. It's allowed us to do things. When I saw the strike force go together, I just want to say that my wife and I were like, wow, we hope Tom Farrell gets to lead it. And sure enough, he was selected to lead it. So we were very, very happy. All your concerns are valid. We've pulled together as a community since I've been here in '99 to do the right thing. And I just say, I'm very happy to have all you work together. I like all your comments, but just remember the Rollingwood has gone through changes over the years. We've had a lot of threats. We've had a lot of changes, all good. LCRA sold our, was going to sell our sewer system to someone else. We had to go fight that and buy it ourselves, et cetera. There's been a lot of changes in this city over the years, which our leadership has helped us with. I think we have a great chance now to do the right thing again. So I just want to thank Tom Farrell and all the others to help lead us through this. I don't know how Pegasus got involved. I've read the reports. Very glad to see that the community is coming together to have this discussion. That's all I just want to say.
Thank you, Brian. Ashley, do we have any other hands up?
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
It doesn't look like we have any other new hands. Brooke Brown, I do see yours is still raised. Are you wanting to make a comment? You're on mute, Brooke.
Sorry. I'll click. Here we go.
We do not have any hand raised at this time.
Right. Wally, I see you're back, and I'm so happy you're back. I hope y'all are doing well now. Oh, Wally's mute. Well, I want to thank everybody for their participation, and I want to reiterate, if you think of something else, send us an email, send it to Ashley, and Ashley will distribute to everybody. And I absolutely appreciate everybody's comments. All the comments are valued, and we'll make sure that our whole strike force gets to get a view of the tape if they weren't here. And if they weren't, we'll have a little summary of it that we can try to get that. And I think I walked away with several suggestions that I think are very valid, that I certainly will consider that we incorporate and see if we can get this thing moving a little bit differently on that. So thank y'all again. And David, thank you again for that. And I hope you caught a lot of trout, and I'll drag you down to Port Aransas and show you how to catch a redfish with a fly rod. So anyway, I do appreciate it. And if there's no other comments, does anybody on our strike force have any comments that they'd like to make before we close out? Do we have any hands up?
Tom, this is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
I just wanted to tell everyone thank you for participating. We have, in some respects, flown blindly without a whole lot of public participation, even though Tom has asked for it at every meeting. He hasn't done anything wrong in that respect. But I greatly appreciate people both taking the time to speak here, and for the many emails. I know I'm not the only one who's reading every single one of them. Bill Clinton used to say that there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed with what is right with America. And I think that's definitely true of Rollingwood, that there's nothing wrong with this community that this community isn't capable of handling. And my experience through both meeting people that were directly affected by some of the earlier scenarios that have been discussed, and through the email process and through this process, is that I've just been blown away by the skill set, the skill sets of the people of this community. I don't know that there's any problem that we don't have some expert in. So thank you, everyone. I'm better off for having been on this and for having known everybody, and I appreciate the input.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan, very much. And I will close with this comment. I have never been averse to reaching out to our citizens that are experts. And Ryan is exactly right. We have experts in every field you can think of. And I have never been averse to doing that and won't hesitate to do it again. So I'll probably be talking to several of our participants here later on. So unless we have any other speakers that came in late, Ashley, I'm going to adjourn our public meeting.
We do not.
And without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for everybody's participation.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
as always.
Thank you, everyone.